Hello everyone, my name's Gareth Byrne and today we're going to try and bring you up to date on the impact of linearization of GCSEs and how they affect your delivery of GCSE ICT. My role at Edexcel is I'm the subject advisor for ICT and effectively that means I support teachers and lecturers like yourselves who are delivering all of our ICT qualifications. So effectively I'm the first port of call if you have a question about delivery or assessment or the content of any of the qualifications. We'll start today with an overview of the changes of towards linearization, and a lot of, some of the elements have no impact on GCSE ICT, but we'll cover those briefly and move on as quick as we can, and then we'll go through, so like I say, those general elements at the start, and then we'll get down into a little bit more detail about GCSE ICT later on in the presentation. The presentation element of this session will be recorded, and we'll put the recording on the Edexcel website. So unfortunately you won't have the opportunity to ask questions at the beginning. However, we will stop, and if you have any questions throughout, feel free to hold on to them, or as was mentioned earlier, send them along. They'll go to somebody in the background who will send them to me during the question and answer session, and we'll deal with them towards the end. So just to confirm that the questions you ask won't be put on, or your name won't be included in the recording that goes online. Right, so let's have a quick look at what exactly are the GCSE reforms. So there's a quick overview of some of the content on the page, on the screen in front of you now. But the main effect, the main changes to GCSEs are that, of course, with linearization, assessment will now be at the end of the course rather than throughout. There's the introduction of something called SPAG, spelling and grammar, which doesn't really apply to ICT, but it'll pop up a couple of times on this on these slides in this presentation. So if I glance over it, you know why. Performance is still measured mainly as the performance in the GCSE is still measured in the main headline performance measurements of 5 A star to C for schools. We've removed the option to resit, or rather the option to resit has been removed, and the January assessment window will no longer apply. But also this it will have the same impact on controlled assessment, in that you'll be expected to complete the controlled assessment element of the course, submit the controlled assessment element of the course at the end. However, it has little or no impact on controlled assessment because, as you would imagine, you can complete this throughout the course and sort of hold on to it until the submission time. The next slide we're going to look at is a little timeline that gives you an idea of how Ofqual have set up their proposals and how the linearization changes will come into play. So the first one you can see there is that in September 2011 this will be the first teaching of 2-year courses with modular assessment. So your current Year 10 students who started the course in September 2011, they'll be the last cohort to deliver or to work towards GCSE in a modular format. Next couple don't really apply to us. Actually, number 3 does, and as you can see here, that cohort of students that began last September, they will certificate in June 2013, and that one doesn't apply to us. However, you can just see that in January 2014 and March 2014 there will be no longer, those windows will no longer be used for modular exams. So that January 2014 will be the first time that the modular exam won't be available. The next one that is of interest to us is September 2011 will also be, it's also worth mentioning here that September 2011 will be the first teaching of the linear format of the GCSEs over 3 years. So those of you who started the GCSE in September gone with your Year 9 groups intending to offer the course over 3 years, that will be the first, the beginning of the new linear course with those new Year 9 students. And September 2012 will of course be the first teaching of the linear GCSEs to a 2-year cohort. So in September 2012, if you're delivering it in years 10 and 11 in a traditional GCSE format, that'll be the first time you'll start the new linear assessment. Next one doesn't really apply to us. However, as you can see there, GCSEs in June 2014 will be available only for qualification in a linear format only. So that will be our first certification in June 2014 for those students who started in September 2012. And that one doesn't really apply to us. So what we're trying to get across here, that Edexcel have really tried to make minimal changes to the specification. We've spoken to several groups as part of our teacher panel. We've also spoken to other teachers, and we've consulted on the Ofqual. We've been part of the GCSE consultation by Ofqual, and what we're trying to get across to you is that there really will be a minimum amount of change to our specifications. I'm going to leave that slide on so you can have a quick read of it, but it's not very relevant to us in this case because again it's the spelling and grammar, but I'll leave it there really quickly for you to have a look for those of you who deliver other subjects. And then we'll move on to the next slide that highlights again that for GCSE in the linear format there is no content change as far as control assessment is concerned. So you will still continue to deliver the control assessment element of our GCSE ICT in the same way that you would under a modular format, with the exception of the some of the submission points, and we'll go into those in a little bit more detail in a moment. The next slide just gives you a little bit of information about how candidates will not be allowed to carry unit results forward from one examination series to another, except of course where those units have already been used to count towards the single award. So for those of you delivering the double award, it's possible of course to certificate at the end of year 10 for the single award and carry those results forward with a view to completing the double award at the end of year 11. Now, the next slide talks a little bit about government reforms and performance tables. So this slide has a little bit of relevance to ICT as we offer a double award. So it's worth mentioning to you that the changes of linearization mean that the headline indicator will continue to be there. So the headline performance indicator of 5 A stars to C will still include GCSE ICT. And all qualifications, now regardless of their size or type, will count as one GCSE. So where you've offered a double award in the past, it will only count as one GCSE towards that headline measure of 5 A stars to C. And again, that applies to all multiple award qualifications across all subjects. The double award, of course, will still carry forward the merits for students that they would take on in terms of their college applications, employment, their future academic career. They'll still carry that double award forward. The only difference will be it will no longer count as a double award towards that headline indicator of 5 A stars to C. So this is the first slide where we'll sort of look at less of an overview and more to do with GCSE specifically. Okay, so just a quick summary of the impact of these reforms on GCSE ICT. So GCSE ICT will now be in a linear structure. As I mentioned earlier, controlled assessment can only be submitted at the end of the course. However, of course, you can complete it throughout the year in the same way that you would previously, and stick it, put it away in the metaphorical cupboard and hold on to it until the final submission point when you would submit it at the end of the course. Students can no longer take advantage of the resit opportunity, and as we mentioned previously, spelling and grammar does not apply to GCSE ICT. The question, will there be any changes to assessment? The question is, will there be any changes to assessment? And the answer is no. There'll be no changes for towards assessment. For the single award, students will still have to sit the Unit 1 exam. The paper will still last over 90 minutes and will still take up 40% of the overall GCSE. The element of the Unit 1 exam where students are assessed on the quality of their written communication, which is highlighted by an asterisk beside the question, that will still apply. So no changes to the Unit 1 assessment. Again, this time looking quickly at the double award, students will of course still have to sit the Unit 3 exam paper, and it will still last 90 minutes. The result of the Unit 3 exam for students taking the double award will make up still 20% of their overall double award GCSE, and those quality of written communication questions will still apply to the Unit 3 exam. Let's just move on. The next slide talks in a little bit more detail on control assessment, but just to clarify those points for you. So in terms of how control assessment is assessed, nothing is changing there. Each CAB is still valid for 2 years. Students still have to complete a CAB consisting of 4 activities in the same way that they will have previously. The same maximum 40 hours still applies to the control assessment, and it's still under those control conditions. And of course, the result of the CAB will still make up 60% of the single award and 30% towards the double award. Another question you might be thinking of, will there be any changes to the specification itself? We have resubmitted our GCSE ICT spec to Ofqual, and there are no content changes in terms of how you deliver the course and the content that you deliver. I think this slide might be a little bit out of date in that we have heard back, and the linear version of the course has been accredited by Ofqual and is available to deliver from September 2012. And like I said, I did send an email update on Friday of last week that just gave you a little bit of confirmation of that, and I've since had a few questions back, but the answer is no changes to the content, so you can continue to deliver the course as you would have previously. That pretty much covers ICT in terms of how it's affected by the move to linear. So just to recap, we know no changes to content, no changes to how units, the examined units and the control assessment units are assessed. Those main changes to recap are of course that they move from a submission at the modular window, so the January and June window, that process no longer applies, and instead the assessment of the course will be done at the end. The next slide talks a little bit about exam preparation and how we will support your delivery of this course. I hesitate to say new course, but of course it's newly accredited under the linear format. But of course there's a couple of things on the screen now that you can see that we'll of course help you with exam prep through, or will continue to help you with exam prep through Exam Wizard and the Results Plus service. If you've never used Results Plus, I would recommend making it part of your regime in terms of how you prepare for the Unit 1 and the Unit 3 exams. We will provide some additional online training and network events for control assessment. And of course the free schemes of work and the course planner that we've always made available for the GCSE, the schemes of work that we've always made available will still exist, but we'll have some new course planners available, and they'll be there to download from the GCSE ICT website, and as soon as they're there I will let you know via an email update. But of course they'll be changed to reflect the fact that the assessment of the course will now be at the end, and they'll give you some guidance on how to plan for that. And we also have some training available through these online tutorials and also some face-to-face events. That's a little embarrassing picture of me. You can of course contact me with any questions. You can call me on the number on screen just now and speak to my colleague Nimesh, who is my new subject specialist for ICT, so he's well versed on the content of all our ICT qualifications, and Nimesh will either be able to answer your question there and then, or if I'm available he'll pop you straight through to me and I'll happily have a quick chat with you. Alternatively, you can email me directly on the email address on the screen just now, ictsubjectadvisor@edexcelexperts.co.uk. If you've never sent me an email before, can I suggest popping me along a blank email to that address, which will sign you up for the email updates that I send on a regular basis, well, usually every couple of weeks. And they're a really good source of information regarding GCSE ICT and any additional support or changes that you need to be aware of, and also all the other ICT qualifications that we provide. You can, of course, also use our Ask the Expert service, which allows you to contact either myself or a dedicated expert on each qualification. So in this case, asking a question through Ask the Expert will put you in touch with the Unit 1 Principal Moderator, or Principal Examiner, or the Unit 2 Principal Moderator. And of course, our ICT team here will also be keeping you informed through a series of mailings over the next coming months, just to make sure that you're up to date on these changes and how they affect you. They also have quite a lot of correspondence going on with your exams officer. Please do keep an eye on the subject page as well. I quite often do we do 2 or 3 posts a month in there that will just keep you up to date on, again, changes that will affect you in your delivery of ICT qualifications. I quickly touched on these a moment ago, but just to mention again, those course planners will be available, and they should be there on the website very shortly. There will be some information about how you might deliver the course over 2 years. There will also be one that looks specifically at how you might deliver it over 3 years. They'll take into consideration the delivery of the single and the double award, and how you break down your delivery of Unit 1 versus the skills delivery of Unit 2. And they're also designed to build in some revision periods, so you can specifically plan for when exactly you want to fit in a mock examination, and there'll be some information there on how you can use the Results Plus service to support that. This slide talks a little bit about how you might decide to keep the students motivated. I understand, of course, you're now delivering content that won't be assessed until the end, so you no longer have the opportunity to hit them with an exam in January. So a couple of suggestions might be the idea that, and the course planners will come into play here, that you mix up the content of Unit 1 with the skills needed to produce it in Unit 2. You can, of course, practice skills. We've made all cabs are still available to download on the GCSE ICT website, along with exemplar material and a sample cab including exemplar material. And then, of course, you can offer a mock exam from the individual sample assessment materials and past papers that we have available on the GCSE website. I quickly mentioned revision planners. I have had several questions over recent weeks from teachers wondering if and when we will provide you with some sort of revision document to support your kids as they work towards sitting the exam in June. And we're looking at the moment at producing a revision guide and some workbooks, and also you can use the Results Plus service to get your mock exams looked at and marked, and it really all ties up nicely to support your delivery of all these examined units. As soon as I have an update on the release of the revision guides, I will let you know via an email update, of course. So, before I stop talking and take some questions, I'll just really quickly go over a quick summary again. So, GCSE ICT has moved now to a linear format and to linear assessment. Spelling and grammar doesn't apply to us, but it has been introduced in several subjects, and you can see those on the screen at the moment. There are no changes to the content of GCSE ICT, and there are no plans to make any changes to the content of the controlled assessment. You have lost the opportunity of a resit, which you would have previously had under the modular approach, and instead all assessment will be restricted to summer series. It also mentions quickly there about how this has affected the headline indicators of 5A star to C for schools performance, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, GCSE ICT will still continue to count as one GCSE towards your 5A star to C headline school performance factors. But as I mentioned earlier, those of you delivering a double award to your learners, it will still only count as one GCSE, and that is the same. That applies to all GCSEs and all qualifications, and including all subjects. Questions?